You're watching Caucasus Now. I'm Orkhan Amashov. However bilateral the Azerbaijan-Armenian peace process might have now become, there is one issue on the agenda that has always entailed some form of external involvement or presence, drawing in third-party generated proposals in one form or another. That issue is a connection between Azerbaijan's mainland and Nakhchivan exclave via Armenia. Or to be more precise, it's a question of control over the route and the mechanism of its operation. The latest twist in this tale involves the talk of a US commercial operator managing the corridor and the ambiguity surrounding this very idea. Let's try to understand.
The long shadow of Article 9 of the 10th November 2020 trilateral declaration signed between Azerbaijan, Armenia and Russia to conclude the 44-day war continues to loom large over the Baku-Yerevan peace agenda. Although the clause has lost much of its practical relevance by virtue of more recent developments, its imprint remains visible in connection with regional connectivity. The article, as originally formulated, envisaged the establishment of an overland route linking Azerbaijan's mainland with its Nakhchivan exclave, with the Russian Federal Security Service's border guard troops overseeing its operation. Despite this, Armenia has never publicly accepted the concept of extraterritoriality or the transfer of sovereignty over any part of its territory. For its part, Azerbaijan has consistently called for unobstructed, unhindered passage from one part of its territory to another without Armenian checkpoints. Iran, Yerevan's key regional partner, has objected to what it called the corridor logic, siding with Armenia and opposing what it perceived as a border-altering initiative. Russia, despite its stake in the matter, failed to help the parties make tangible progress. The Trilateral Working Group, established in January 2021 and composed of the Deputy Prime Ministers of Azerbaijan, Armenia and Russia, has become effectively inoperative. In August 2024, amidst the deadlock, this specific item was removed from the draft peace agreement intended to be addressed later, perhaps after a preliminary treaty is signed. Yet the issue never disappeared from the public domain. Discussions surrounding the corridor have re-emerged, with its resolution being seen by many as a potential icebreaker for the entire peace process. Recently, this conversation gained renewed energy following reports of a US proposal whereby a third-party commercial operator, namely an American one, might oversee what is referred to as the Zangezur corridor. The idea was first attributed to US Ambassador to Turkey, Tom Barak, in a report by Middle East Eye. The exact meaning of his remarks remains difficult to decipher, with Armenia initially flatly rejecting the proposition. But subsequent statements coming from Yerevan, namely from Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan himself and members of his party, suggested a shift. The Armenian leader, through his press secretary, indicated that the government distinguishes between the outsourcing of sovereignty and jurisdiction and the outsourcing of commercial management of infrastructure, such as railways or pipelines. Azerbaijan, while openly welcoming greater US involvement, with President Aliyev paying tribute to President Trump at the Shusha Global Media Forum, has not confirmed or endorsed the operator idea. President Aliyev stated clearly that this was a matter for Armenia to decide, adding that no foreign operator would be present on Azerbaijani territory and that there must be an unimpeded corridor with no Armenian checks on Azerbaijani citizens or cargo. On the whole, while the Azerbaijani-Armenian peace process remains staunchly bilateral, with the 10th of July Abu Dhabi meeting marking a new stage, new external initiatives continue to enter the fray, carrying with them both promise and potential peril.
And now joining me to discuss the latest phase of the Azerbaijani-Armenian peace process, the question of connectivity in particular, and the ambiguity surrounding recent proposals, Arsen Kharatyan, founder of Alec Media, joining us from Washington, United States, and Ahmad Alili, director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center, joining us from Baku. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen, and special greetings to you, Arsen, for joining our program for the very first time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much indeed. My first question is going to be about this latest talk surrounding the idea of US proposal based on commercial operator managing that overland connection between Azerbaijan's mainland and Nakhchivan exclave. Arsen, we heard from Armenian side, there have been a couple of statements. We heard what was in principle flat rejection at the beginning. I think Mr. Torasyan, who is a member of the Civil Contract Party, rejected. And then, of course, we heard some other statements giving rise to the assumption that there could be some form of third-party control without undermining Armenian sovereignty. I think that's what Prime Minister Pashinyan said via his spokesperson. What is your reading of the Armenian position regarding this matter?
Thank you once again for having me on your program. I want to start a bit earlier, right on the day of the meeting between the two heads of states, Pashinyan and Aliyev in Abu Dhabi. The Deputy Foreign Minister of Armenia alluded or basically announced that there may be a discussion about outsourcing of some of the logistical issues with regards to the connectivity. And that sparked quite a serious discussion in the Armenian society, social media, expert groups, media, you name it. So then we heard obviously several players in the Pashinyan party talking about, yes, we are ready for several different types of cooperation, but it cannot come at the cost of Armenian sovereignty. Armenia should have a sovereign right over the road. Now, how serious is this suggestion from the United States is one thing that needs to be considered, and how detailed is it? And we also heard some people talking about, there is nothing that the Armenian constitution allows with regards to possible lease of any part of the country, whether it's a long-term agreement or whether it's anything else that could be discussed under some kind of a semi-sovereign solution. In between, we also heard that there could be somewhat of a cooperation, and that was by Pashinyan during his long 4.5 hour press conference, where he suggested that there could be possible cooperation between a third party and the Armenian border guards and customs officers. However, at this point, what I hear from official Yerevan is, as you basically put out during your introductory remarks, nothing can be done which can come at the cost of Armenian sovereignty. In other words, most probably this is a no to Washington.
I see. Ahmad, at the Shisha Global Media Forum, President Ilham Aliyev stated, whilst responding to a question by one journalist from Reuters, if memory serves me correctly, he stated unambiguously that there would be no foreign operator on Azerbaijani territory, no lease, no rent, no outside oversight, nothing of that kind. But matter about that passage traversing Armenian territory, southern Armenia, is matter for Armenia. And then President Aliyev said that Armenia could take all sorts of decisions. He made a reference to a EU observation mission. But then he outlined key Azerbaijani demands, that is, unobstructed, unhindered passage, and also necessity of Azerbaijani cargo and citizens not facing Armenian border check. Do you think US proposal could be acceptable for Baku?
Well, President Aliyev didn't say no.
No, he didn't say no.
Yes.
Did not. He said it's for the Armenian leadership. That's what he said.
Exactly. So it means that the decision is who should control the transport passage. It's going to be full Armenian responsibility. So it's most probably Baku signals to Moscow and Tehran that this is Armenia's territory, and whatever decisions are going to be taken about the fate of these territories belongs to Armenia. So if somebody disagrees with that, they should negotiate it with Yerevan, not Baku. Baku's like that. What Baku wants is quite clear, and you mentioned it. There should be unhindered passage, and there should be no obstacle, which means that Armenian border security guys and other officials, they should not prohibit Azerbaijani citizens in any way from using this passage corridor. And in this case, I believe that Azerbaijan also tells about that the security should be guaranteed by the third parties. So How it's going to be done? Will the third party will be United States or Russia, as it was written in the document, or somebody else? It's up to Armenia, but Azerbaijan requires that these three basically two conditions, but one of the conditions you can extend and make it the third condition also, that there should be no Armenian border security, which also means that there should be unhindered. So there should be no the blockage in that in the future even like that nobody should be able to block that road. But for me, frankly speaking, it's mostly PR problem. That how Prime Minister Pashinyan's team framed it right after the 2020 Karabakh military defeat. The problem was that back then, after Karabakh defeat, Prime Minister Pashinyan and his team, they wanted to build a story that they lost Karabakh because, according to international, it did not belong to Armenia. So that is why they could not protect it. But Zangezur corridor is within internationally recognized territories of Armenia, so they are going to give a full fight. And they are going to protect it, so they are going to fiercely protect it, and nobody is going to attempt to challenge Armenian sovereignty over the lands. So back in the realities of the 2020, especially right after the Karabakh War, Prime Minister Pashinyan and his team had to come up with a certain PR move to show that we lost it, but because it was not ours, but we are going to protect it because it's ours. And then now, when you reach a period when you have to solve this issue, you have to that those conditions that you signed back in November 2020 about Zangezur corridor, it's back. You have to somehow to convince the internal audience that this is not against Armenian sovereignty. So in this context, American presence might really help Armenia and Nikol Pashinyan's government to convince the internal audience that this is not against the sovereignty of Armenia. But there are quite many other questions, and I believe that in the upcoming weeks and months we are going to see even more fierce reactions from Tehran and Moscow. And I believe, especially in this case, Tehran, because Tehran believe that Tehran's view on this issue shapes Armenia's view on this case also. So that is why now Tehran is going to be more active on this issue. So, but again, this has the internal part, which is again like some PR elements involved in here, and also geopolitical elements.
I see. So what do you make of the influence or impact of Iran's vision of the way this corridor is to be constructed, connecting Azerbaijan's Mela with Nakhchivan, on the decision-making process in Yerevan? Is it quite considerable?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments that I will make, but referring to your question, no, it's not. Tehran, it happens so that Iran has the same interest as Armenia in this case, and that is it's Armenia's sovereign territory, and Armenia has to control it. Now, several things. Let's begin, and this is the first time I'm on this channel, so I would like to sort of be a bit careful about toponymics and the political phrasing. There is no such region called Zangezur in Armenia. It's called Syunik. So if we're talking about PR and if we have constructive mind, then maybe we should actually be careful with using the phrases. And this is not just for Ahmad or your program. Generally saying, if we want to be constructive in the discussion, we have to be careful. And PR, I mean, we're talking about how we construct this or how do we want to serve this to our own publics or to the world is important, because that's how things move forward when you actually choose the words and how you refer to things. Going back to November 2020 agreement, I mean, none of those points are there anymore. We don't have Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. We don't have anything that was agreed upon based on that document. And just if we have to refer to anything, the only place where you have the word corridor is about Lachin corridor, which doesn't exist either. Now, to talk about having something else that was probably verbally agreed upon, and I don't know about that, but there was, of course, a point about connectivity, obviously, and about unhindered transfer of goods. That's true. However, if we're going to refer to that document, we have to understand that that document functionally doesn't exist anymore. Going to the point of connectivity in general, I think the real constructive discussion here could be if we actually started talking about not just transfer of goods and people and transportation through Armenia to Nakhchivan, but also how is it going to work with the Armenian goods going through Azerbaijan? Because this is not a one-way street. We're talking about unblocking of communications in general. And if we're talking about Tehran, Moscow, or any other capital, Armenia and Azerbaijan, in the bilateral manner, can and should discuss about deblocking of the communications between each other, rather than talking about geopolitics and considering other parties' interests. Now, once again, going back to the first question, no, it's not Tehran who wants Armenia to have its sovereign control over its sovereign land. Number one interested party is Yerevan, obviously, and that has been the case since the war of 2020 was over.
Ahmad, so Arsen expressed his dissatisfaction with the term Zengezur corridor, which is very popular in Azerbaijan. And I also, the self-same point was made by Arek Kochinyan, is a regular guest as well. We perfectly understand that sensibility. It's not a question of undermining Armenian sovereignty, just a term has emerged. But I understand the point, of course. Ahmad, this point about reciprocity, the expectation on the Armenian side seems to be based on a couple of fundamental linchpins. There has always been some rejection that Armenia has never undertaken the duty to provide that sort of unhindered passage for Azerbaijan at the expense of its sovereignty. Azerbaijan disagrees with this fundamental point. And the second point, which Armenian analysts and officials are making, is about reciprocity. And I remember 2 years ago, there's been some talk about Azerbaijan providing some form of unhindered passage for Armenia to connect its southernmost territory via the rest of the country via Nakhchivan on self-same terms. What do you make of this point about reciprocity? Is reciprocity completely unacceptable for Azerbaijan and exclusively circumscribed to what is in Azerbaijan referred to as Zengezur corridor, to what Armenians refer to as a Mehri link?
So first of all, about the naming things, I fully understand the sensitivity around the issue, right? If from my case, I use all of those terms, the Southern Corridor, Peace Corridor, Zengezur Corridor, all of them. But frankly speaking, my understanding was that for the last couple of months, and I would say that for a couple of years even, we moved beyond that. Because the number of the meeting, the intensity of the discussion. So right now we are discussing mostly about the essence of this thing, and then how to label it. You can claim that this is quite interlinked issues. I fully accept it, frankly speaking. Like that in many instances we are using that, but talking about the labeling, that kind of brings back certain issues. And then you kind of get distracted from the essence.
Yeah, so what are you effectively saying that, whether you call it Zengezur corridor, Mehri corridor, Sunni corridor, the corridor of peace, we talk about the substance, the nature of corridor, that unhindered connection.
Yeah, exactly. So even in this TV program, we've been referring to all of those. We are using all of those things. But I fully understand and respect the sensitivity. So that's something. But again, Arsen is the first time here, but we are going to be even more careful on those issues. But the thing is, regarding the reciprocity, there is Arsen made a point that in the past there used to be agreements, and then it got. Let's say now they are not respected, etc., etc. I would say that this is a big problem right now for Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process, because geopolitical context changed so fast that certain documents or certain agreements reached on certain time period. To what extent they are relevant? So the two-party statement, right? Most of those issues. They were relevant at a certain geopolitical context, but then they lost their relevance. The only thing that keeps that three-party statement alive so far is the 9th article. Otherwise, there would be no need to refer to that document. But we've been saying that the very first change to the document, tripartite statement, came from Armenia. Back in the November and the December 2020, Armenian forces, they were slow to withdraw from Kalbajar. Then they asked for extension. Then we kind of like that Armenia and Azerbaijan developed a certain, let's say, modus operandi that this is, if it's required at this time period to make a certain change in the document, so we are going to make that change. So that is why the document signed in Washington in before September 2023 about the reciprocity and like to what extent that's relevant now. So the geopolitical context totally changed. We have Russia-Ukraine war, we have Israel-Iran war, and etc. And in this context, especially reciprocity about the things that, like for example, Armenian side signed document about Zengezur Southern Megri corridor, and by doing that, there is a certain responsibility Armenian side took over itself. But Azerbaijan did not agree that it's going to provide the same conditions for the passage from Nakhchivan. So that's what President Aliyev was referring in Shusha Media Forum also, that Armenia has certain obligations to provide certain conditions and to the corridor that's passing, the connects Nakhchivan to the mainland Azerbaijan. But Azerbaijan has no obligation to provide the same status, same conditions for Armenians passing through Nakhchivan, because Armenia has options to reach its southern parts through other parts of the country. So there is no problem for Armenia living next to the northern part of Nakhchivan, near border northern part of the Nakhchivan, coming to the western part of the border or the southern borders of Armenia. But Azerbaijan is needed. So Azerbaijan is, it's the only option for Azerbaijanis to reach Nakhchivan. So that is why, in this context, the reciprocity under the new, let's say, conditions, it sounds a bit different. But I believe that leaders, they had an extensive discussion about this issue in Abu Dhabi, and I believe that in upcoming weeks we are going to see result of it also.
Arsen, I believe that you belong to the cast of those analysts who sort of believe that if states, governments, are unable to produce compromise solution, analysts, experts, civil society members can actually offer something tangible by means of engaging in an open discussion. Let's be very clear about this corridor issue. What Azerbaijan is effectively saying is that what Azerbaijan says entails some extraterritoriality. I mean, what President Aliyev said, he said that when we travel from Azerbaijan to Azerbaijan via Armenia, he didn't say that, but he said that we shouldn't feel like we are traversing Armenia. Our cargo and citizens should not face Armenian border guards. Then third-party idea has emerged. Do you believe, in the fullness of time, Armenia will be somewhat persuaded into agreeing some form of extraterritoriality, which Armenian government will frame as being fully in line with its sovereignty, and at the same time that will provide solution to this impasse? How do you envision that solution? I'm asking this question to you, putting this question to you, in particular, bearing in mind that you believe that some ideas could be generated within this circus as well.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. I believe in track 2. I believe in track 1.5. I believe in multi-track, and for our viewers, this may be too much terminology from conflict resolution, but in reality, this is a lot of work that is being done. As they say, you cook the ideas among each other, often behind closed doors before they come out and are announced. And I do think that ideas can be explored through discussions like this, including this program with you guys. Now, just going to the point, that very important point that Ahmed made with regards to how geopolitics can change documents. Yeah, of course they can, depending on what kind of documents. When it comes to legal basis of this or that document, every document can be broken, unfortunately, in today's world, as we see things are shifting and changing a lot. But that's why we're talking about comprehensive peace agreement, which is a very particular, very specific thing that may survive different political waves and geopolitics in general. It may also not, but it actually brings a lot more commitments rather than just a trilateral announcement which basically became the basis for the ceasefire, which, as you rightly mentioned, Ahmad, was renewed in January 2021 and then revisited again, of course, considering the realities on the ground. Now, with regards to how can we sort of talk about an extraterritorial or whatnot, we do have examples, like, for example, how Russia connects to Kaliningrad through Lithuania. Huh? I mean, yes, on the one side, when it's Russian-Lithuanian border, there are Lithuanian border guards and customs. The things are viewed and controlled, and then they go all the way through the territory. They don't feel like they're in Lithuania, and then come out in Kaliningrad. What's the problem with that? We can use models. So I'm not saying that there is no other option of finding solutions in this particular case. I'm saying that what is being offered actually is viewed as not just hindering, but also seriously damaging the sovereign right of Armenia of having control about what is being transported on its territory. With regards to reciprocity, and I will be quick here, we need to understand, are we discussing whatever is being discussed on the level of the leaders, whatever is being discussed on the level of foreign ministers or other maybe invisible, let's say, discussions between bilateral, on bilateral basis between the parties, are we talking about issues basing our negotiations on November 9, on discussions and the rounds of discussions on the peace treaty that happened in Washington, D.C., or are we basing this on on everything together? We know that it's not based on the OSCE Minsk group. So when we're talking about reciprocity, or when we're talking about, well, Armenia unilaterally has to allow Azerbaijan to go through its territory to connect with Nakhchivan, and Armenia has no similar problem, and that's why we need to give it up. I don't think that's constructive in general. Now, I'm not talking about who is right or who is wrong or what is possible or not. I mean, if we're going to discuss that, that's a different story. However, I think that as much as Azerbaijan actually wants to get this before anything else is signed, before any other larger agreement is in place, and that's obviously the case, I think that in general we should seriously discuss larger deblocking of communication in this context. Even if it's not happening in this context, in the long run, if we're talking about connectivity and if we're talking about trains that could be going through Armenia, then parts of Nakhchivan or along the Armenian border, and then connect to different parts through Turkey and otherwise, I would discuss or suggest a larger discussion, especially considering the fact that we're not officials, we're not representing our capitals officially, in the larger scheme of events of what can be beneficial for everyone, not just for Azerbaijan, not just for Armenia, but the larger region. And as we know, this whole discussion is being put into the much bigger connectivity issue, whether it's the Great Silk Road, whether it's the Middle Corridor, whether it's combining the interests of various players on being interested in having bigger volumes of goods to be transported from Shanghai to London, you name it. President Aliyev was talking about north and south in a different way recently. So what I'm saying is, if we are actually interested in making this part functional, because Azerbaijan is connected through Georgia to the Black Sea, that exists for a long time. So this is nothing new. It's all about volumes. We're talking about volumes of goods that can be transported. And I see no problem in making a wider discussion if we are actually constructively interested in finding solutions. In order to achieve that wider solution, this limited issue involving Azerbaijan and Armenia as an obstacle should be removed as well. President Aliyev, yes indeed, at the Shusha Global Media Forum, he talked about the Zangezur link in connection with the north-south corridor as well. He said that you can connect via from mainland Azerbaijan to Nakhchivan exclave via Armenia, then connect to Iran, and effectively said that this overland passage should not be viewed merely just part of east-west transit corridor, but also as vital ingredient of north-south corridor.
Ahmed, I'd just like to put to you one more question about Zengezur corridor, or Sunni corridor alternatively, and then move into the subject of the constitution, Armenian constitution, and some other related matters. The question of trust, fundamentally, which is evidently lacking in Azerbaijan-Armenian dynamics. President Aliyev, let's follow what Azerbaijani official narrative is suggesting. President Aliyev said that without Zengezur corridor being opened on Azerbaijani terms, there will be no wider opening of communications between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And we understand what those Azerbaijani terms are. In the case of Armenia and Azerbaijan failing to achieve compromise on that particular connectivity item, Azerbaijan will carry on its connectivity agenda by means of connecting with Georgia, Europe, and so forth. And then recently, I think whilst being interviewed by German media, Presidential aide Hikmet Hajiyev said that Armenia could also connect with the larger middle corridor infrastructure existing in this region and become part of the Trans-Caucasian corridor. How do you understand that Trans-Caucasian corridor thing? What does it entail? Is it wider connectivity or is it something limited? I'm sure you read that particular interview.
Yeah, sure. But let me go back to the few points.
And by all means, Ahmed, also feel free to reflect on any of the points made by Arsen. And Arsen, the same applies to you, of course.
Yeah, sure. No, there is no need to mention that. Like, we are doing that, right? So I believe we were for some time. So I believe there is no problem in exchanging ideas in a positive way. So I believe that Arsen's ideas about that whatever we are going to build, that should be very sustainable and they should survive the geopolitical waves that we are in South Caucasus, witnessing that how fast they are changing. So we have to build something very sturdy. And in this context, I believe that what we are going to build in the region, that should have a status very similar to Suez Channel or Panama Channel. Because the question is that are the ships passing through Suez Channel or Panama Channel, are they violate the sovereignty of Egypt or Panama? So that's a question. So do Israel and other countries, they, like Egypt, considered as that violation of these rights when some of the ships of the other countries passing through this channel? No, because once you build something big, once you build something that's going to be part of something much bigger, the rules should be much more liberal, allowing the ships passing through this channel. So it means that if you want to make this project interesting for investors, you have to make sure that the changing geopolitical context, political issues, they are not going to influence this case in the future. So that is why the investors that are going to invest in this project, they should have guaranteed that in the future, Armenian-Azerbaijani problems, they are not going to influence how their cargo is going to be carried via this corridor. So this is very important issue. So it means that if we are building something for long term, something comprehensive, we have to take into account these issues. And again, like that, this is something like that, you know, for a long time there would be arguments from some Armenian commentators that Azerbaijan is going to apply force to take control over the southern Armenia. But no, the issue is that if somebody uses military force, so that means it's going to be violation of international law, and then you are not going to be able to build something big here. So it means that the international investors, they are not going to be interested in here. So that is why Azerbaijan wants to build something big. So everybody should see it that Armenia fully agree with that. Azerbaijan recognize Armenia's sovereignty over these lands. President Aliyev repeatedly said that. So there should be no, let's say, double reading in this case that, well, Azerbaijan says it, but like implies something else. No, Azerbaijan fully committed to this idea that it is Armenian territory. And the President Aliyev, in the last Russia conference, he clearly stated that this is Armenia and Armenia's responsibility, who Armenia is going to let in the control of the borders.
But when the lady
Americans,
from
Russians,
Reuters, and I was there, she was just behind me.
Yes,
when the lady from Reuters put a question about saying as a corridor, American company, President Aliyev said that this is a matter for Armenian leadership. Armenia can do whatever it likes on the same territory.
It means that.
Yeah.
So it means that Azerbaijan fully recognized that. A few like the comments about the Trans-Caucasus Caucasian corridor.
Yeah.
It's very important, you know. Like if we say that, like we have only one link, and that is Baku-Tbilisi-Kars. So it means that if outsiders want to destroy this transport corridor, they should attack that link, and once they destroyed it, that's over. So that is why now Baku works on this issue. Baku wants to make sure that there is a transport corridor linking Azerbaijan to Turkey and the Black Sea via Iran.
Yeah.
And the existing one, which is via Georgia, and the one that is basically very controversial issue, political and geopolitically controversial issue, which is a Zangezur-Sazur-Mehri corridor. So in this case, I believe that Baku wants to show everyone that the whole region is a big corridor. It's a one big pipeline. So do not attempt to control Georgia, Armenia, or Azerbaijan, because if even you control one of them, the corridor is going to survive. So we are located in a geographically, we're located in a very, let's say, interesting region, let's call it like that. So it means that we have to come up with the non-traditional political solutions to these problems. So that is why Azerbaijan wants to make sure that all of these lines are operational. Yes. And that is all of these lines together. They are, I believe that's what Azerbaijan refers as Trans-Caucasian corridor.
Thank you very much for explaining to us your concept of what Trans-Caucasian corridor might have meant us. And as we see, one of the fundamental problems in Azerbaijan, dynamic, is a lack of trust. Even the fact that Azerbaijan believes that Armenia should not have direct physical control of that route emanates from lack of trust. I think that President Aliyev said that during the Soviet time there were problems, that route was endangered, therefore the security must be provided. And the lack of trust is still there when it comes to Armenia's constitution and Azerbaijani view about that preamble. And President Aliyev, during Shusha Global Media Forum, talked about the evolution of Armenian etymology and consciousness, I think. He said that Prime Minister Pashinyan is now saying that Armenia should have recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, including Karabakh, earlier than 2022. And he's saying that there's no guarantee that the perception, Armenian view about it, will not change from now on. And he said that we need some sort of guarantee. What do you make of Azerbaijani reservations when it comes to Armenia's approach to Karabakh?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And as we're playing with the words and toponymics a little bit, if we're going to talk about Caucasus Corridor or South Caucasus Corridor, I would refrain from using Trans-Caucasus, which is looking at it from Moscow. Trans-Caucasus is Zakavkazia in Russian, and I think that it would be better to actually localize it and look at it from our perspective, and I mean South Caucasian perspective, which is actually geographically the correct term to use, I think. And I think it's a good point that Ahmad is making. If the intention of Azerbaijan is to actually contribute to the larger the regional integration, and that is the three countries of South Caucasus, Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan as a whole, it's a great idea. I'm a big advocate of that, and I've been openly talking about it. And I think that it's a good idea to actually solve our own issues first, become a region which will be a bigger market, which will be a bigger force, which will make everyone have bigger footing on the larger talks, whether it's geopolitics and otherwise. And I agree, unconventional political solutions are needed, considering the amount of problems that we've had and still continue to have in the region. And of course, we are open to discuss and find more creative solutions. However, the biggest example, again, is Georgia. I mean, the largest export-import that goes from Azerbaijan to the west goes through Georgia, as we know, Baku-Ceyhan, Baku-Tbilisi-Kars. We saw the new railroad that was built in Samtskhe-Javakheti region of Georgia, which is by large investment, huge investment by Azerbaijan, and that's under sovereign rights of Georgia. So now if we're going to bring the examples of Suez or Panama canals that have basically sovereignty, in case of Suez, sovereignty of Egypt, but as we know, it's regulated by the 1888 agreement, which allows or gives rights to several multinational players to transport goods at different conditions. That's one thing. If we're talking about Panama, that's a long other history starting from early 20th century that has changed sovereignty, etc. I don't see a need for that, except for Azerbaijan wanting to make sure that the route does not have full control by Armenia, like other routes that exist in Georgia have control by official Tbilisi. So this is the big discussion. Let's make it clear. And Armenia is saying, no, I'm not going to give this up. And Azerbaijan is saying, you know what, you're weak, you lost the war, now I'm going to grab that. If you don't want it, I'm going to portray you as the destructive part. And if you don't want it, I'm going to say everywhere that you're the one who is becoming an issue for this middle corridor or whatever you name it. Setting this aside, talk about constitution. Sure. I mean, obviously, Azerbaijan has made a clear point that before any constitutional change, there will be no signing of the treaty. Armenian current government has made it clear that it is considering constitutional changes, but it has nothing to do with the request from Azerbaijan. I am positive that as much as we are hearing political discourse from Armenia, which is probably historically, let's say, soft in many ways, and if anyone, Pashinyan is the one who comes up, yet no week passes without a shocking statement, etc. We will see how the discussion about the constitutional changes in Armenia will take place. I'm sure this will be put it will become part of the electoral process for the 2026 June parliamentary elections. My understanding and my belief is that they will most probably put it on the same date or at the same time, so the people will not, because we do need a referenda, so it will probably, the 2026 parliamentary elections will coincide with this referenda, and whatever happens with regards, I mean, the content of the constitution, the discussions about this among the Armenian different groups, elites, experts, and other communities remains to be seen, but I don't think it will happen anytime before June 2026.
And what is your prediction about the result of that particular referendum? Because the latest reports coming from Armenia, I think there was one report survey conducted by International Republican Institute, which is Washington-based, by the way, did reveal that in Armenian society there is a sort of a lack of coherence in a sense. There's a considerable portion of population which does not support either Pashinyan or any other person, and their view could matter a great deal. Do you think, I mean, I put this question to Arek Koshinyan as well a couple of weeks ago, do you think Azerbaijan should be concerned about it when it comes to peace process?
If Azerbaijan truly believes that peace agreement is possible only after a constitutional change takes place in Armenia, yes. Because as IRI report says, nobody has not only anything nearing majority of population voting or a political popularity in the country that can talk about what the outcome of the elections of 2026 will be. But it's quite low, as we saw. We're talking yes, Pashinyan being still the number one politician, but with 16% of confidence. And that means that leaves basically, I would say, roughly 70% of the current or today in today's context. And I'm talking about August 2025. The majority of the Armenian public is undecided at this point. Now, Not only the political popularity of the party, but also the law on constitutional change may be an issue, because you need the participation of at least 50% of the voting age population. Are we going to have that number of people going to the polling stations? I'm not sure. Considering the Yerevan mayoral elections of September 2024, which was probably the lowest participation in a long time, obviously things may change, and I don't want to predict things at this point. But I think, generally saying, we may have several obstacles. And again, if Azerbaijan is linking the signing of the peace agreement with the constitutional changes, I think, yes, there may be a disappointment.
So I think, could you just remind us, our audience, more than 50% of eligible voters should participate in the first place. That's a quota requirement. And what percentage of them should say yes? Is it 50 plus, or is it more than that?
Indeed, 50 plus.
50 plus. Ahmed, I would like to hear your reflections about the self-same subject, and we're going to finalize after your comments.
Well, the constitutional change is a very important issue for Azerbaijan, as we discussed with you earlier, that there are two big loopholes Azerbaijan wants to get rid of. The one of them is a political loophole, the other one is a legal loophole. And the political loophole is the OSCE Minsk group. So it means that once Armenia and Azerbaijan, they reach certain agreement, certain political groups, certain countries, they might come back and say that, look, we are not happy with the results of this deal, so we are saying no to this deal or whatever process you are having, right? So can OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs say that based on their national interest, etc.? It's another issue, but the probability is that once there is a problem in Armenia-Azerbaijan relations or Armenia and Azerbaijan relations toward these countries, they might use this case. So that's why Azerbaijan wants to get rid of this political loophole. The second loophole is legal loophole, and this is a constitutional loophole. So if we want to build something stronger, if we want to build a document that's going to last for a long time, the document that can survive different change, the context change, geopolitical context change. So we have to make sure that there are no loopholes. So that is why Azerbaijan insists that OSCE Minsk Group should be abolished and Armenian constitution should be modified. So these are the two big issues, and I believe that there are understanding like that Azerbaijan concerns, they are widely accepted in Armenia and in many international communities, but realization of it is quite a big problem. So as Arsen mentioned, like those conditions that 50% of the population should show up, and then 50% plus one of them should say yes to this change, right? So it is quite something, quite a risky endeavor to be engaged with. So that is why I believe that there are many underwater stones in this case. We are going to face quite many challenges, but frankly speaking, there is no other way but that without, we cannot move forward without getting rid of these loopholes. If we keep these loopholes and the signed document, and then in a few months something will come up, and then this document will be useless, as three-part statement right now is So that is why I believe that we have to be very cautious about this issue. Regarding the few comments that Arsen made, like the Transcaucasian, I agree, we have to get rid of all of those, the imperial naming of the stuff, but there is a word like Caspian, etc. So in this sense, it's a bit sounds natural, but it's a bit sensitive issue to Armenia, and I believe that we have to take that issue also into consideration. And also the question that why there is no special clause with Georgia. Azerbaijani connectivity passes through Georgia also, but also Iran. The thing is, I believe that the answer to this question is quite obvious, that Armenia, Azerbaijan, we basically had war a couple of years ago, And then at the beginning of these relations, like it's going to be different from Azerbaijan-Georgia relations and Azerbaijan-Iran relations, and it's going to affect all of the decisions that we are going to make regarding the region. But I'm quite happy that we are on the right path, and I believe that Armenia and Azerbaijan should be praised by those achievements that we made for the last 5-6 years, right? So it's us. We can do that.
Yep.
For a long time, there would be this image of Armenians and Azerbaijanis that they are not civilized enough to deal with their own conflict. We are proving that no, we can do something on our own, and that is something that should be praised. And I believe that Armenia and Azerbaijan deserves quite a positive comments on this case.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Asen. Thank you very much indeed for this very interesting conversation. Yes, indeed, the process is completely bilateral. Although during the introduction I mentioned that the connectivity has never been sort of purely bilateral, drawing in external proposals, but even the discussions surrounding connectivity, as many other tracks of this peace process, they are bilateral. Well, I mean, in order to be able to hear elucidating and illuminating answers, you need to put pertinent and relevant questions. The answers were indeed illuminating and elucidating. I hope that questions were not bad either. I'm very grateful to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, Arsen Kharatyan and Ahmed Alili joined me to discuss the latest developments surrounding connectivity between Azerbaijan and Armenia, proposals, claims, counterclaims, and the prospects of a long-awaited peace. The question of connectivity, its management, its symbolism, and its geopolitical implications continues to invigorate and test the resilience of the Azerbaijani-Armenian peace process. You've been watching Caucasus Now, and see you very soon indeed.